Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Thank you and welcome back to my shop. Today I'm going to do one of the most annoying reels that ever seems to come into my shop, and I'll explain why. And you can see a toothpick here. That's part of the solution, but I just cringe every time I see one of these. Not because I can't repair it, just because it's a little tricky. It's the Shimano Tekota 500. It's a level wind, higher end reel. A customer of mine just brought this in. They purchased it at a local fishing show, and they just asked me to tune it up and get it ready for the season. They were complaining a little bit about the functional of the drag free spool release, and I just want to make sure it's ready. So I'll go ahead and show you the basic maintenance procedures, show you why I have a toothpick here, and hopefully if you have one of these, it'll encourage you to go do this. But a word of caution, it's an annoying reel to work on. Having said that, I'm going to start by removing the set screw for the nut as we take the handle off. Going to remove that. This reel looks like it's had a little bit of injury over time. I guess they lost a little badge in there. That's not a problem, but it also tells you a little bit about how it's used. Okay, here's your first clue here. There's a hole in the pinion gear here. That's not an oil hole. That's a hole to access a spring which holds a click. If you hear this this spool when it releases, there's a click to this, and that's because there's a little noisemaker in there. So we got to get that noisemaker out and not lose it. So you put a toothpick into that hole, and you work through the release of the star drag. And hopefully when you leave this reel, that little noisemaker will still be there. This reel's got what I describe as a boing factor. So there it is. All right, so we didn't lose it. That's a good start to the maintenance of this reel. But this is the one that always makes me a little anxious. That's opposite that hole there. You will see there's a little thing here. It's kind of hard to see. Hopefully I'll bring it up here. Just a little indentation that this happens to be holding right now. And I'm going to release that and we'll take that out of there. But it's just a little dart kind of a thing. But what that does is that works against the star drag, making a little release, letting you know that you're backing off the drag. So be careful about that little guy. You lose that and your day's going to be shot in terms of repairing this reel. So back onto with this reel, there's a series of washers, a series of little shims. There's also a bearing in here, and there's the pinion shaft ferrule that goes over that inside the reel. The reel is actually held on by 6 screws. There's 4 outside plates, and there's 2 that actually tie into the free spool release mechanism. This reel is very similar to a Penn International 55. I actually have one here I'm working on. I'm waiting for some parts, and I'll show you as we take this reel off, with the exception of that annoying little back spool clip there. You look at these from the internals and you swear it was made by the same company. And of course Shimano and Penn are not the same company, but you think about that. While we're doing this, a couple of things you're noticing going on in the background. One is I have a latex glove on. I like to keep that on so that as I open up the reels and am exposed to the lubricants and dirt and stuff inside this reel, that I protect myself as much as I can there. The second one is that I'm using a parts tray where I'm putting all those small parts. This one just happens to be the bottom of a milk jug, but I would recommend that you do that as well. It certainly saves time and effort when you go to reassemble the reel. And if you're working with very small parts like that little dart mechanism there, then you certainly don't want to just lay that on the side of your workbench somewhere and then go to seek it out when it's hard to find. So, okay, this is the last one. These 2 go on the posts that hold the springs on, and so that should just push the plate out. It did, and we're going to just go remove that now. And then notice that on the top of this we have a couple of the shims. There's 3 of them here. This is a good time to tell you that if if you don't work on these reels all the time and you don't know what sequence these are, if you're getting uncomfortable with this reel, take pictures along the way. That way you can remember you know, where you are in that. Okay, so I just opened this up. Here's that, and let me show you the inside. This is a Penn International 55. I'm just going to pull the top on this. I'm waiting for springs on this one, post springs. But if you put these side by side, kind of hard to tell the difference here. You've got, this is the release mechanism on both. Here's your collar for your free spool. That's your collar. These two springs are what I'm waiting for. Your main gear, anti-reverse, anti-reverse. So you would almost think that these were designed and manufactured by the same company. So they're not, but just a kind of an interesting aside as we work on this Tekota. The other thing tells you that there's a good amount of quality in both of these reels. Okay, so I'm just looking at this again. This was cleaned. He doesn't know the history behind it, so I'm going to go pull the drag stack out here. See what we got. This is the pinion one. This pinion one has a fork on the bottom that sits on that first compression gear. Just again, word of note as you go to reassemble. So the top part of the drag stack actually has that key where that pinion gear sits. This drag seems like it's in good condition and it's oiled, so it doesn't appear as though that needs any work. I'm going to lay these out in the sequence I take them out. I'm using a razor knife here. There's multiple tools you could use. You can use a little, here's a pin I use a lot. Pull that second one. Pull the third one. And then the final one is sitting below here. These are all well oiled, so I'm not going to do anything in terms of lubricating them. If you wanted to, you could use a drag grease. This is a Cal's Universal drag grease, or you can use a little bit of oil. Typically you would put the drag grease would go on fabrics. These are kind of a composite, could be either. You would want to use the oil only on felt drag. So there's an eared washer that always sits in the middle set that goes there. And there's the top washer that sits in here. Then there's that top compression washer. And if you were noting as you were doing this, that face out has that little keyway to it, and then here's the ferrule that goes on top of that. So we're set there in terms of doing that. I'm going to put a little blue grease on this one here. It seems like this reel's in pretty good shape. He didn't know the background to it, so he just brought it to me so that I could get it ready for the season. So a little bit of grease on the movable parts. In this case, this is the free spool release that pushes this collar gear up and down to clear the way to let that gear spin free. When casting, for example, or drop fishing, I'm going to inspect the main gear. All of the teeth seem fine. There doesn't seem to be any damage on that. I'm going to put a little grease on that. Then this last one is the anti-reverse. So I'm just going to turn this and make sure that it sets as it comes back. You'll see that there's a lever moving under there. It's a friction lever. That's working fine. So we can tighten this up. I'll just check the inside of the plate, make sure that's clean. It is, and this one has an anti-reverse bearing there, so I'm going to put a little oil on that. I use a Real-X oil. It's formulated for fishing reels. I'm also going to put a little bit up top here on that free spool release. And the way that this free spool release works, there's a little stud sitting out here. Excuse me, when you go to put the case back into alignment, that's going to sit in this channel here, and that's what's going to make this go up and down. So we're going to just go reinstall this then. We just knocked out the bearing from the side plate there, and that's not a problem. There we go, we got the free spool set correctly. I'm going to go put that bearing back in now. And we put, if you remember, there's 4 external screws. They're larger than the 2 that hold the springs on, so we're going to go put the 4 external screws back in to hold the side plate down. These are Phillips head screws. A lot of times folks will ask me in the comments section of these videos, can you use a mechanical screwdriver? And I say, sure, you can. I would recommend against it. If you like to work with your hands, the manual tools are better to me. I suggest that if you want to use it to expedite a process, go ahead and use it to take the screws out. Use a low speed setting. I don't like using it putting the screws in because some of those have a very high torque rate and they can pull the plates out of alignment and cause the reel to bind. But if you want to be gentle about it, then I guess go ahead and go do that, right? So okay, so those are the 4, and then we have the 2 screws that go into those posts that have the springs on them for the spool release. Now it's starting to work up my nerves here as we have to work that little stud thing there, that little dart. But I got 2 more of these yet. And those of you that have watched my videos know I have a little bit of trouble with smaller screws, and it's that time in the video. So sit back, relax. I'm not going to tell you to go get a cup of coffee. I trust I will solve it before then, but these are always difficult for me, and I apologize for the airtime here. Seems like every fishing reel manufacturer manages to give me a couple of screws that I have some difficulty with. I trust that as you're reassembling your reel, you won't have that kind of trouble. It's getting a little silly, but I just ask you to bear with me. Now let's go at it this way. Let's try and put it on the screwdriver and see if we can't get it started. Problem is they didn't give me much clearance to that side adjustment cap. There we go, there's one in. Yay, let's all stand and cheer. So yeah, this reel compares very favorably with the Penn 955. I've had them in enough times to know that they're durable, that they are a quality product, that they do last. So I don't fault the individual for buying one of these used. There's plenty of life left in this one. As we saw, the drags are in good shape, the bearings are in good shape. Now it's just a matter of getting these back together. So the shims go in next. I said 3, there happens to be 4 of them. I guess one of those was stuck together as I was doing it. Again, if you take the pictures, you kind of get the notion of what this is all about here. It's almost coming up on toothpick time here. All right, the shims go in. And final cap shim there. Then there's 2 washers here, so just a moment on these washers. This is kind of interesting. These are concave washers, so they can actually sit 3 different ways. They can sit this way, which is the easiest for the reel to function. They can sit face to face, which creates a space on the inside, which requires just a little bit more attention. And then they can sit opposite each other so that the space is on the outside. And each one of them has an effect on the drags. Now, when I took this off, I noticed that both of those were together, just sitting there. So speaking of taking off, I got to take that latex glove off for this last piece now. The last piece is this little rocket, for lack of a better term. Sits opposite this. There's a spring inside here that needs to get compressed. And if I work off the camera with this one, you'll understand why as I try not to shoot this out. And again, between my problems that I have with small parts and the design of this reel, it gives me some cause for concern. So you want to press that rocket down. You want to take your toothpick, grab the spring and pull it back and see if you aren't set. In that case, I'm not set. So you just got to play around with it until you feel that the whole thing is pulled in. You've taken the tension off that spring by using that toothpick, and you've managed to hold it in as such. And then again, you want to get that toothpick in, and it looks like we're good there. So now comes the fun part, is you have to hold the tension on the toothpick while sliding that star drag over. Oops, we just lost it. Here it comes. I got lucky. All right, so this is why you can see I don't like this particular feature of the reel. It's not an easy game to play. So again, we'll try this reload. Maybe they just wanted me to show you this again in the video here. But again, you want to push this all the way in. You want to grab it with your toothpick. Pull back on the spring. It's not loaded there. And it's going to test your patience for sure. Okay, that's loaded properly there, so let's see if we can get this star drag over the top while keeping the pressure on that tooth. Nope, we didn't. So it's trial and error here. Again, no fault from the reel itself. The reel actually makes this a good reel, but it's just annoying. So as I said on the top of the video, it's just one of those things. You deal with the quirk of the manufacturer, but it drives you crazy. We are going to get this. We may run out of video time, but we are going to get this. Okay, we got it. Alrighty, so I hope you enjoyed watching me flounder with this. Been doing this for 20 years. You learn some of the quirks and craziness of this thing. Doesn't always go well. Patience and a sense of humor seems to be the answer on most of these. In this case, you really do need a sense of humor to figure out why they did it that way. And if anybody knows, I'd be happy to entertain why that is in the comment section. Alright, so we're going to put that little shim back on. We're going to put the cap back on. Call my customer and tell him never send me one of these. Oh, I'm only kidding. Tell him that his reel's ready and he can go fishing and that everything's nice and clean inside. So put that little shim back on. Looks like it needs another quarter return there. And one final last insult to me, another little small screw to lock that down. And the good news is my parts container is empty. I guess there's nothing worse than putting a whole reel together and finding out there's a small part in there that you don't know about. Okay, so let's give it a try. Oh, you know, that's going to last a long time. It's a nice, nice smooth reel, nice smooth functioning there. Maybe back that off a little bit. Okay, he's ready to go, and we got a functional reel. So apologize for that toothpick. That doesn't look like anything you're going to serve food with now. But if you enjoyed this video, please like it on YouTube. If you want to see more, please subscribe to my channel. Among other things, I think I'll do the video when the springs come in on this 955, although it's very similar to what we just did here with the Tekota. And I got some others in the works as well. So thank you for watching this. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle.